So thank you for checking out my podcast. And if you're wondering how I record my podcast, well, I actually use Anchor, which is a fantastic tool, free resource to use. But if you're new to podcasting like I have been, it really helps you to get started without worrying about editing and doing all the sort of hard work yourself. It does it all for you. If you haven't used it, it's probably the easiest way to make a podcast. So let me explain a few tips for you. It's free, which is fantastic. You don't have to pay anyone to edit your podcast or pay for software. There's loads of tools that allow you to record and edit the podcast right from your phone and computer. So again, you don't need any special equipment. So if you're looking to start a podcast and you're sort of on a budget, it's a perfect way of starting. The best thing which I found, it helps to distribute your podcast for you, so you can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more hosts that listen to podcasts. The best thing for me was that, because trying to distribute it from another software was really confusing, and all the technical know-how, which I don't have, was done for me by Anchor. So you can just, once you click the podcast, say where you want it delivered to, and it will do all the work for you, which is fantastic. And also you can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. So ads like you listen to on this one, this is an ad just talking about Anchor. You can get a little bit of commission from that, which is great. So extra bit of money in your pocket from doing what you love. And I have no problem doing this advert for Anchor, because ultimately it has allowed me to create a podcast. So if you're passionate about something, I'm going to talk about it, and it's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. So for me, I would recommend Anchor 100% if you're looking to start to do a podcast. And obviously then you can, elaborate and get better with your podcast, but you can just get better sound equipment. But all the software you need to do a podcast on the go or at home on a computer is all from Anchor. So for me, it's the best tool I've ever used when it comes to starting a podcast. So definitely, if you're interested in starting your own podcast, whether that is on health or fitness or travel, just pick something that you're passionate about and talk about it, then download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
Hello and welcome to the Plant-Based Revolution podcast with your host, myself, Neil Damerel from My Lifestyle Coach. Thank you very much for joining me again this week on the show, and I'm really excited to introduce another guest on the show, a good friend of mine, Sophie Heath. I met Sophie when we studied our Masters in Nutrition at Loughborough University back in 2011, and she's a great girl, and she's been kind enough to come onto the show and really provide some good information that I think you as a listener will really, really enjoy, and you'll really take on board a lot of the stuff that she talks about in the episode, in the interview. So just a little bit of background on Sophie. Sophie is a registered nutritionist, personal trainer, and she lives in Bristol. She really believes in the balance, of a balanced lifestyle. She, like I said, we met at university when she got a Masters in Nutrition from Loughborough University, and she's also gone on and got a postgraduate diploma in human nutrition as well, and worked in the industry for about 7 years now, and currently works for a company called Go Faster Foods, which mission is to help people fuel active lives through good foods, good food products, books, recipes, and educational programs. So I'm not going to talk too much because Sophie's going to introduce herself and we'll get into the interview. But hopefully you'll really enjoy this episode. I'm sure you will, because there's some really good knowledge bombs, as I like to say, that you can really take on board in terms of how you can maybe look at a food diary in a really different and exciting, fun way that Sophie talks about. So before let's just get cracking into the show. So let me just introduce Mrs. Sophie Heath, and hope you enjoy the show. Okay, Sophie, thank you very much for joining the Plant
No
Revolution
worries.
podcast. So, for everyone that doesn't know you, and obviously we've had a chat before we came on live. We obviously knew each other from uni back in the day at Loughborough. But for everyone else that doesn't know anything about you, just give us a little intro in terms of yourself.
Yeah.
What you do now, and what your passions are. So.
Okay, so I'm Sophie Heath. I am a registered nutritionist, and I'm also a certified personal trainer as well. I'm currently working for a company called Go Faster Food, so I'm the company nutritionist for them, and the sports scientist as well. So I help look after new products. So we have an energy ball called Go Bites. So I look after product development, and I also look after the education side of the business. So we're looking to kind of promote healthy eating, but without kind of talking too much explicitly about healthy eating, just really teaching people the link between what they put in their mouths and how they feel and how they perform in their sport and things. So that's me in a nutshell.
Because I had a little look into Go Faster Food, so we'll talk about that as we go through. But
Yeah, sure.
what kind of got you into exercise? To where you are now, did you start off from a young age being active, or did there's any kind of
Yeah.
changes in your life that kind of affected them along the way?
Yeah, I did. So I was always not pushed in a bad way, but pushed into doing loads of different exercise and sports when I was younger. So probably the earliest thing I remember is things like ballet and swimming. They were always kind of up there in my sports. And actually, all the way through childhood, I always danced and did a lot of swimming, played hockey, quite. All those things were kind of my competitive ones. And then I did everything. So I did like karate, gymnastics, synchronized swimming, literally you name it, I gave it a go. Didn't always last that long, but I loved it. And it actually, weirdly, when I went to Loughborough, you kind of think of Loughborough as being this, amazing sporty university. But actually, when I went there, I was always really indecisive, and I just loved doing lots of different sports. So I was always a bit of an all-rounder. So when I went there, I actually kind of lost my way a bit, because you have to kind of choose if you want to do if you want to be in a sports club, you sort of have to choose which one you want to be in and stick to it, and that's sort of what you're committed to. Whereas I went and I was like, I want to do hockey and I want to do swimming and I want to do dancing. So in the first year, I did a little bit of everything, but not a lot of anything. So I ended up losing my way a bit, drinking too much, and naturally, I think they call it, is it the freshers 10, like the freshers 10 pounds or something?
Okay. Yeah.
I did a good one of those, definitely.
Yeah.
But then found my way after I realised that the triathlon club did some really good swimming sessions and great running sessions as well, and they also did circuit training. So I ended up joining that, and that was a really pivotal point for me in terms of kind of getting into triathlon a bit more. And I managed to actually do the dancing as well on the side, which was quite fun. And I've always kept it up really since I've left. Since I've left university, I've always been part of a swimming club, or made myself swim, or been part of a running club. Also, even when I wasn't a part of a running club, I'd always run with people at work. So I just always felt like it was part of me and who I was.
Yeah.
So I've always been extremely active.
That's good. Because I mean, that's how we met at Loughborough doing our masters,
Yeah.
and we both enjoy triathlon.
Tri
So
club.
we did the tri club. So there was some good sessions there. It was good, actually. Really,
It was awesome.
really
Yeah,
enjoyed it. Yeah. So
I think that's some of my best swimming for sure.
yeah, you're on fire more than me, but it was very good.
Yeah, but I can't keep up with you running or cycling, so
Yeah.
you'll give me one.
Yeah, definitely. But I mean, it was a great year. That was a really, really good time. But
Yeah,
during that period, I wasn't at Loughborough in my undergrad. Obviously, you were. But
yeah.
what felt to you to be like a moment that you felt you needed to change? Obviously, because when you go to uni, I know when I went to Loughborough, I was still quite in the social scene to try and meet as many people as possible when you're new to a new city, a new uni.
Yeah.
It's probably the same for you in your first and second year, but what kind of changed in order for you to kind of maybe go towards the triathlon route and kind of
I think
realise that to lose weight? Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think it was for me, I realized that I do like structure around exercise, and also just I think it is great to have a club for the social scene, but in the sense that you're with like-minded people. So it's not always about kind of going out for drinks, but actually, you know, you do those social things every now and then, but actually, you know, going for the runs and going swimming and having chats in the showers after, you know, it is actually a social thing to do as well. So it's just really nice to meet new people. And I found that I just perform better in life if I'm active. I genuinely do get, I'm never say depressed, like in the actual clinical sense, but I always get really moody if I'm not exercising, and just feel like everything seems to be, you know, on track if I'm exercising. I always want to fuel myself better and eat better foods. I always feel like I want to get up in the mornings. And you know, if I'm doing something in the evening as well, I'm, you know, so much more energetic and lively. It just makes me happy. So that's kind of, I felt like I was missing that at a stage. It wasn't just the fact that I was unhappy with you know, my body shape and things, but it was more the mental health that comes with it, I guess. And I felt like something was missing, and I wasn't happy, you know, being lazy and not doing a lot.
So when you looked at, you know, you said that kind of freshest 10 when you put on a bit of weight,
Yeah,
you know, socializing, etc. What
yeah,
kind of things did you look at, you know, yourself in order to start making changes? Obviously you were studying nutrition and sport
yeah,
science anyway, but what
yeah.
kind of steps did you first take to kind of, you know, address those
Make the
issues?
change.
Yeah.
So in terms of kind of things that I did to my diet and stuff, or
Yeah, so, you know,
yeah.
what kind of things did you look at changing to begin with to make the difference? You know, did you
So
go onto an extreme diet, or did you kind of just look at different ways that you could change it yourself?
lose weight. So what the main thing for me, actually, I remember my brother saying when I was younger, I used to keep. I don't know how I got into this because it's very popular these days, but back in those days, it was people thought I was weird for doing this. But I used to actually at school write down all my exercise, and I
Okay.
had a little diary, and I used to write down my exercise. I even wrote down like I do 100 ab like crunches every night and stuff, and I used to write down these things. Really weird for a teenage girl to do, I think. And then it progressed into, I used to write a food diary as well, and I used to track kind of not track on an app or anything, but literally just used to write it down. I used to like write green for good stuff, blue for okay stuff, and red for bad stuff, so I could like roughly see how I was doing. So that's what I picked up again. I remember my brother saying, oh, you used to do like a diary thing when you were younger, why don't you do that again? And it just helped me take a bit of control back, I guess. So I literally did that system. I just did like green for good foods, blue for kind of average foods, and red for bad foods, and kept a little pocket, literally a pocket diary every day, and just main things really were just cutting down on like portion sizes and processed foods. So I kept it very simple. I didn't ever follow a diet as such. I did limit my carbs a little bit in the evenings, and obviously tried to exercise more. But the issue I actually had at the time was that when I wanted to get back after my first year of enjoying myself, let's say, I wanted to get back into a lot more exercise, and you know, I tried to do a lot more running at the end of term, and I ended up getting a really bad back injury. So I had 2 protruding discs in my back.
Okay.
So it was quite severe, and so for me, I had to change my diet. I didn't really have a choice. Like I had to drop weight via my diet. So that's why I kind of chose the food route at the beginning. And then as with knees and backs and things, as you kind of lose weight, generally they tend to get a little bit better. So I think my body actually just couldn't cope with the weight.
Yeah.
So when I did lose a bit of weight, I could then get back into a little bit more activity. So I started with swimming and body balance, and then kind of got back into a bit more running and cross training and things. So so that was kind of the route that I took, really. Very simple.
No, it's really good to hear, because, you know, I talk a lot with my clients about just counting calories, being calorie conscious, and you've done it in a really simple way that a lot of people listening can really take on board, actually. And
I hope so.
did you take that food diary, I mean, did you use that like for a year And
do you know what?
Still do it now?
I had to stop myself because I've kept them at home. I'm a bit of a hoarder, and I've probably got a pile of that much. So I think there was maybe about 6 years I was doing it for.
Wow.
For my second year of uni, and I was quite religious with it.
Yeah.
But in the end, I realised that actually I'd started to. The reason I kept doing it wasn't because I necessarily needed to lose weight, but it was just the thought of having to write stuff down made me stop like the small snacks through the day, because someone would offer me, like, I don't know, literally like a nut or something like that, and I'd have to think in my head, I'd have to write that down. So I said no. So like small things like that, it did keep me quite conscious of what I was eating. So I think it probably in the end I got to the point where I was like, actually this is taking up too much headspace, too much sort of admin time, and it was probably doing worse than good in terms of like mental health. I think I probably got a bit too addicted to it. So I definitely recommend doing something like that at the beginning, until you're a bit more aware of what works for you. And you can, I personally believe in getting to that point where you can eat very intuitively. So you kind of know what works for you, how much you should be having. I know for me, if I for my wedding, and I've got honeymoon coming up, and so I always, try and get into your best shape. So the things that I know now, I learned for myself, that because I do so much exercise and I eat really well, that my appetite is always quite high. So I have to restrict my portions in the evening, because I'm like a bottomless pit. I could eat, I always eat everything on my plate. So I just know for me that portioning up a smaller plate in the evening and not going back for more, that is the one thing that really, really works for me. And obviously I personally work well being a bit more strict in the weekday and a little bit more relaxed on the weekend, because I do believe in treats and I enjoy my food. So I like to have a pizza and stuff, and a glass of wine. But I do, if I'm trying to get a bit more strict, then I do realise that you have to have consistency across the weekend, and you can't go all out all weekend, because it levels off what you've done, all the hard work you've done in the weekday. So just being a bit more mindful on the weekends and working on the portions in the evening is something that I know works for me. So getting to that stage where you do the food diary, you kind of tweak things, and you start to realise what works for you and what your body needs. And then at that stage, you can then kind of stop doing the food diary and start to be a bit more intuitive with how you do things, I guess.
Yeah, good. And you said you probably had a good idea of what was good, bad, amber in terms of okay. So how would you section that out for someone who is new to that kind of way of doing a food diary? What would you put under the green levels, ambers, and what would you put under the reds?
So I would love to actually look back at it now, because obviously with my knowledge now, I'm really intrigued to see what I used to think was like blue. That's the one that I'm thinking, I can't actually remember what I did for blue, but I know that obviously anything unprocessed, fresh, like vegetables, fruits, protein sources, all that stuff would have been green. So just real food, as we say in Go Fast Food. Then I think, if I remember rightly, blue would have been things like cheese, things that maybe were higher in saturated fats, that are not necessarily deemed to be that bad for you in moderation, but if you have a lot of them, obviously they're energy dense, and you don't want to have too many saturated fats, even from the natural kind. So I think it was things like high fat kind of but natural foods, and then the reds were all kind of processed foods, so any crisps or biscuits, all the kind of takeaway foods, alcohol, I'm afraid, all that sort of stuff. That was all the reds.
But I think it's really good. It's a nice, really inspiring way of looking at it, because we've got all the apps now that we can count your calories, and I think a lot of people, you can get quite bored doing it, but I think I always advise my clients to use it as often as you can until it becomes like you have a normal habit now, because you've done it. If you did it for 6 years, it's going to be ingrained pretty strongly into your lifestyle now, as opposed to if you only did it for like 2 weeks. If you only did it for 2 weeks, you probably wouldn't have known as much benefit to it.
Definitely.
Yeah,
and I think you just there's so much benefit of looking at a food diary and keeping one it's almost just to be conscious of what you're putting in your mouth, and it makes you take a second look at what you're doing and think twice before you eat something. I think when you keep a food diary, for me, it's not actually so much about the numbers, because I think, as I'm sure everyone who's used MyFitnessPal knows, occasionally you try and put something in and you can't find it, or you don't really know how much you've had of something. So, there is a bit of a leeway with things. And I think, the accuracy in terms of like down to the calorie isn't always amazing in terms of tracking food, but also in terms of your energy expenditure as well. We all burn different amounts throughout the day, and one person, me and you could go for a 20-minute run together and we both burn different amounts of calories. So I think it's not getting too caught up in the numbers to the calorie, but it's just so good to be aware of what you're eating and just aware how much calories things have as well. That's another thing I used to do when I was at uni. I think it was probably actually near the end, so like the third year of my undergrad, when I was starting to get more into nutrition, and in my masters as well. This is the only thing that I can I can understand why people find nutrition so confusing, because I didn't even realize at the time that a piece of bread could have carbohydrate and protein, and if it's seeded, it could have some fats in it.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize that you could have all three macros in one food. I literally didn't know that. I just thought it was like carbohydrate or protein or fat, and that was it. So I used to have a pad that I used to keep, and I would write down whenever I ate a food, I'd look at the label, write down per portion, like how many calories it had, how much protein and fat and things it had, and it would just kind of get me used to knowing, roughly what things were higher in calories and what things were lower, what things were good protein sources and stuff like that. And I think that's quite a good thing to do for everyone. You don't have to necessarily write it down, but just like make sure you keep aware of things. Obviously, if it's fruit or veg, it won't have a label, and that's probably a good thing. But if what you're eating is labeled, then it is good to kind of be aware of what you're putting in you.
Just definitely just looking at the ingredients a bit more, and it being what's the product made of. If it's manufactured more than 5 ingredients, you probably want to avoid it.
Exactly
as much as you can, really. But
But
when you were doing the food diaries thing. Because obviously, I think the biggest thing, and you might find with your clients, is retention and motivation. So sort of like everyone can start a new program or start a new diet, but every diet would probably work if they followed through and maintained it. But
absolutely,
what kept you motivated while you were doing that? Because if you kept it doing for a long time, a lot of people could do MyFitnessPal for a month and then after that, had enough of it. So what was different for you in terms of keeping the food diary? So
I would say probably seeing results, but not necessarily like weight results, because things can fluctuate a lot, especially if you start exercising at the same time or exercising more. But seeing results in the way that I felt, definitely. And I think that's something that I always try and talk to clients about, is like, don't worry so much about the numbers, but just really like tap into why you're doing this. And surely if you're feeling better, that is a positive change. And that, like, so many people say, oh, I've not lost weight, I've only lost a pound, or I've put on a pound. And I say, are you following it? Are you enjoying it? Are you feeling better? And a lot of the time they are feeling better. And if they hadn't have weighed themselves, they would have felt like they were going in the right direction. And they say they even feel better in their clothes and things like that. So I think it's really great to have numbers and to have, certain measures like weight and circumferences and things like that. But just understanding that you're doing this for your health and not the outcome of you looking good is fantastic, and that's what we all want to achieve. But actually, if you focus a bit more on the feeling, then I think you'll kind of go a little bit further in terms of maintaining it. And I did get feedback from people as well, saying that you're looking better and things. So that is always really nice. So I think if you make people aware of what you're doing, that really helps. So just having either a coach like yourself or like me, or even just a friend or a family member holding you slightly accountable. So like at the moment, me and my husband are doing this little thing where like we've got 5 challenges each. So like to go to bed before 10:30, because we can easily, especially with Love Island, we can easily go to bed. Yeah, I know, thank God, I've got my life back. So, you know, going to bed at a decent hour and having done either some reading or some yoga or meditation before that, and portion size, limiting processed foods, limiting drinks, and what's the other one? Oh, limiting how much I snack while I cook dinner, because I do that quite a lot. So we've got 5 goals, and we are basically competing against each other for those 4 weeks leading up to the honeymoon, just to kind of, you know, a bit of fun, just so we feel good on those first few days on the beach. And I think it just works really well to have a bit of like friendly competition, or just basically just have someone aware that you're doing it, so that they can kind of hold you accountable and say, oh, I thought you weren't going to have you know, pizza on a Wednesday or whatever. Because that's definitely something that helps. You know, my housemates at the time, they knew that I was doing that, and it kind of put pressure on me to kind of uphold what I said I'd do. So maybe even something like a blog or an Instagram page where you post your meals, or you do an Instagram story about what exercise you're doing that day. That could be a really good way of holding yourself accountable and giving you motivation to do it.
Yeah, no, that's good. And you said about that, I mean, with your husband, it's fantastic. And I talk a lot about community as well. And I've, you know, we follow each other on Instagram. I see you've been to Lasano, which I'm very jealous, because I like to go there mostly. But, you know, you're there with your family and stuff. And how important do you think community is for yourself in terms of creating better lifestyle habits? Because, you know, if you're surrounded by people that don't want to be active, it's going to be a lot harder to keep yourself self-motivated, isn't it, I think? Definitely,
I think that's actually, you know, getting, definitely if you can get your other half into I think generally people go for people that are similar to them, but if it's a new journey, it's always nice to get on board your other half or a family member. But if not, then definitely join something like some sort of community. So it might be an online one, or it might be you know, your local running club, and they have so many different clubs now that are catered for so many different people. You know, you might be at the start of your journey and just getting into running, or you might be, you know, a bit better and more elite runner. There's so many different levels that you can join now, and being part of that community is so important. I am so lucky to have all my family members are really into exercise, which is great. My dad, and, you know, I can swim with my dad and do yoga with my mum, and you know, go running with my husband. Sometimes can't keep up, but it's just, it is so nice to have that, and it really does spur you on, I must admit. And if you don't have friends and family that are into it, just find a community out there, and an online one is as good as any other. Because I know that you have a good Facebook page as well, where people can kind of, you know, if you can post up pictures of what you're eating and things like that, it just kind of helps to motivate you and get support through it, because it is hard, and even I went through struggle moments, and, you know, you go through little ups and downs, but I think the main thing is, you know, understanding why you're doing it, and if you can get a little bit of help supporting on the way, that goes so far, because we're all human at the end of the day. You know, me and you know a lot about nutrition and science and fitness, but you know, we also are human beings that might like a pizza and might like a glass of wine. I know you're a little bit more strict than me.
No, I don't. I mean, I think the longer you go without something, the less you miss it. And like for me, I don't really like my treats is like peanut butter and rice cakes. I literally probably eat a packet of peanut butter, like a tub of that a week, probably. You know. So that's my go-to
that's
treat, rather than going and having a chocolate bar, that kind of thing. So But so I think over time you kind of desire things less. But
definitely,
you know, with your one-to-one stuff, I know you've been doing that as well. How the lessons you've learned, how do you transfer that across to the people that you work with? What kind of approach do you take with them?
So I would say that I always do recommend tracking food, as you do at the very beginning, because of the way that I found it did work for me. And just for the awareness of it. And I do say to people, don't get too caught up on numbers as such. It's more just to make you conscious of what you're eating, make you more aware, because when you write things down, you become a lot more aware of it. So I always recommend people do that. And for me, I've always felt like working with clients on a more regular basis. So I offer packages where, I'll do all the initial consultations, and then a week later I'll have like a Skype, even if it's just a 10-minute check-in, and we'll have like an end point as well. So they might be on a 4-week package or a 3-month package, but we'll always have that end point where we can look back. And I think it's really important to look back and see how far you've progressed, in terms of numbers, but also in terms of kind of how you feel and just what you've learned as well. Because I like to teach people about nutrition along the way. So I think it's important to understand why you shouldn't be eating chocolate and why you should be choosing something over something else. So having that knowledge has helped me, and I want to pass that on to other people as well. So I think it's a big part of it for sure. So yeah, that kind of helps. Seeing people regularly definitely helps with that outcome, because I think the accountability and the support and being able to ask questions and things definitely helps. But everyone's individual in terms of clients. So some people might be triathletes and they're very good at going away and just doing their thing and cracking on with it, and some people might have more kind of behavioural eating problems where they want that support and they want connection with someone else. So it depends a lot on the client as well.
But in terms of, with I know in your bio, say we're both quite passionate about no fads and diets, stuff like that. How, I know you probably you're passionate about educating people, but how important do you feel that is in terms of people following a program, looking at being more educated, as opposed to follow this plan and in 12 weeks you'll be fine. But unless as soon as they divert away from the plan, everything goes.
They don't have the skills.
Down south,
that it's something it winds me up so much seeing fad diets, just because unless you are the type of person that can for life say that you're going to follow that plan, for me that's just missing the point of trying to lose weight, because I think people need to really look at the reasons why they want to follow that plan. And I think the problem is probably that people look way too short term, and they're saying like, I want to do it because I want to get to this, I want to be at this weight for going on holiday, and then they forget about what happens when they come back. So I think I tend to work with people in terms of their goals, like making sure that their why is really nailed. So, but why do you want to lose weight? Why do you want to look good? Really trying to tackle the underlying issue. And a lot of the time people do say, it's because I don't want to get diabetes because my father had it, or it's because I want to be healthy for my kids and I want to be able to run around with them. So I think tapping into that emotional why is really important. And the problem with fads is that it generally is because people want a quick fix. And that's why they're called fad diets, I guess. But yeah, I am such a big believer in balance and moderation. And I know it's slightly dull, but I think people are starting to come around to the term, having a good balance in your life. And that's not necessarily just about eating either. It's about, sleep and stress and exercise. It's just having the whole package. And people, I really do believe that people need to understand, what they're putting in their body and, what it's doing to them long term, and, how it's even affected them short term, across the day. Because when you understand it and you can kind of feel the benefits, it will help you do it for longer, I guess, which is what we want.
I mean, we're both very passionate obviously in terms of helping people reduce obesity epidemic and stuff like that. But we're talking about education, and obviously we want to be educated, and we're passionate about subjects, so we've gone and got educated. But what do you think is the biggest precursor or prevention that people would want to sort of maintain it? So fad diet's very easy because a lot of people can just buy some shakes and not have to think about it. They can just take it. Or
Yeah.
Their meals delivered, they don't have to worry about thinking about how they can cook fresh for their kids and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But what do you think? I mean, what factors would you say impacted most people in terms of doing that? Was it finance?
I think
talk about. So
there's so many factors, and funny we talk about it now, but I wanted to actually do a post, just an Instagram story about this, for getting people to vote for what they think is the main, one of the main factors or whose responsibility it is, actually, is what I wanted to do. Especially when it comes to childhood obesity, because I don't think we can blame the kids. I don't think they're young, they're old enough to take responsibility themselves. Some of them are, but when they're very young. And so obviously there's so many different factors, and we do have to look at not so much the government guidelines, but the government parameters over advertising and things like that. There is obviously a place for reformulating foods or changing the food offerings in supermarkets, especially when it comes to money off deals, because I went in there recently, and it just winds me up when you walk in, and that whole massive aisle that you walk into, the special offers is all biscuits, crisps, fizzy drinks, and no wonder people on a budget go for it. If they're going to feed, if they can't afford to feed their children anything, or hardly anything, then they're going to choose as much energy as they can for that £1. So there's definitely that to play. But for me, I really, really do believe that we have to take responsibility ourselves. I think a lot of people are really, really easy to blame others in terms of obesity. And I think we need to just start getting more responsible. I definitely think the government have a responsibility to help, the food industry have a responsibility to help, but at the end of the day, they are not force feeding you, and they are not making your choices for you. So I do think we all need to kind of step up and learn a bit about nutrition. There's so many books out there that really, they say it so simply, and they kind of explain basics about nutrition. So reading a book, listening to a podcast. Well done, Neil. Following people on Instagram. Okay, sometimes you don't know who's the right person to follow, so you might follow people that promote fad diets, and I understand that it's quite difficult to know who is actually credible. But all these things can help. And also, at the end of the day, YouTube can teach you so much on how to cook from scratch. There's so many videos now where they kind of just pan in on the recipe and know how to cook it. And most of those things, because they are cooking from scratch, most of them are healthy ingredients because it's all fresh food. So even if you don't really know, I'm not sure whether I should be eating these types of food. Generally, if it is cooking from scratch and you're using kind of raw ingredients, 9 times out of 10 it will be a pretty good recipe. So I think learning to cook the basics is really important, and also just common sense in terms of what to put in your mouth, I guess. It is quite it is common sense, but it's just the hard bit is the fact that most people know they shouldn't be eating a family bag of Doritos, or sorry to name names, something like that. But it is either the willpower or the kind of behavioural problems of why you're choosing that, and so there is a lot to do. But I think.
Do you think I came across an issue the other day when I bought my mum a CD, and I was queuing up, and there was a guy buying a lottery ticket, and I was like, we're just all lazy. We just want something instantly. So the lottery kind of provides instant wealth. You don't have to work for it. Fad diets are like instant weight loss without having to work for it. Do you think that we just, I think we're all culprits of it in a way, but we've something, when we have to work for the degree, you get more satisfaction because you've worked so hard for it over the time. But do you think inherent we're just all lazy, and some people are just really more lazy than others?
Extreme,
I think you're still part of you. I know I'm lazy at certain points, but you think that's...
Well, it's funny you say that, because I have always said I'm I am people who follow me on Instagram or who know me in life will not describe me as lazy. That's not something that they would immediately say, but I think my husband and maybe my mum would, because I actually love to lie on the sofa in the evenings if we've got spare time and watch a film. And whereas Stuart, my husband, he will be, as soon as we get home, he'll be wanting to do the hoovering, wanting to get outside and potter in the garden. You know, he's so you know, up and active and wanting to do stuff, whereas I am actually quite a lazy person. So I've always wanted to cook quick things, and if I'm feeling really tired, I want that super quick 5-minute meal. But yeah, I think something else you touched on there as well is the instant gratification. So that is one thing at the moment that's quite worrying for children, is that they take their mum takes a picture of them on her smartphone, and they straight away get to see what it is, and they want to look straight away like, oh, what did I look like? And it's just getting, you post something on Instagram and you constantly want to know, like, oh, how many likes did that get? Or has anyone commented? How many people have seen it? And people want that reward straight away. So we're just used to getting that now. So I think that's definitely not helping the situation, because people do want that instant reward and instant feedback. And we've got to be honest that weight loss is hard. It's hard work, and I think people have to realize that, to go from 16 stone to a healthy 10.5, 11 stone, it is going to require some ups and downs, and that's not to say that you might actually really enjoy it, and I enjoyed a lot of the process of losing weight, but there's always going to be hard times, and you are going to have to say no to a few things. But it's about choosing how often you have to say no. So I believe that with a lot of people who enjoy food, that actually you can have a bit of a treat once or twice a week, and it not be a catastrophe, and you shouldn't look at it as a catastrophe, because then people just fall off the wagon. So I think it's just kind of going a bit easier on yourself.
That's true. I mean, what are your thoughts at the moment as well, like on childhood obesity and obesity in general? What's your kind of, I'm not going to talk about my viewpoints because I'll get angry, but I want to just get your perspective. What's the state that we're living in at the moment? What it's getting bigger, and it's getting a bigger problem. What's your?
I think it's a very scary world, I must admit, and I'm actually quite concerned about bringing children into this world myself, because I think it is just the environment that kids are living in these days is not active enough, and surrounded by fast food choices, and it's a scary world for kids out there, and a lot of stresses as well, and a lot of social media comparisons, and there's a lot to deal with, and I think we've got our work cut out for ourselves. I think one of the major things is actually social media. Is it can be such a good thing when it comes to teaching people what to eat, how to cook, giving them exercise inspiration and fitness workouts. It can be such a good place, but it can also be a really, really dangerous place for people, especially children, because there's so much rubbish out there as well, that it's quite scary. And I think for me, one of the major things that I'm passionate about, and is why I'm working with Go Faster Food, is the fact that we kind of see exercise, nutrition and mental health as all kind of linked together, and something that should be taught at schools a lot more, or in a lot more effective way. So we're really trying to get into schools. We've got an exciting partnership coming up with the Youth Sport Trust. So they go into like 4,000 schools, and they're really trying to improve physical education and sport in schools, because of the effect that it even has on kind of education and performance at school. And we're going to hopefully have a good partnership where we can bring like a food arm and nutrition arm to that, which is really exciting for me, because as a personal trainer and a nutritionist, I just see that they go hand in hand. They can't be separated. I think you've got to do it all. Like they say, you can't out-train a bad diet, but at the same time, you need to exercise for health reasons and mental health reasons as well. So I just think one has to come with the other. And the environment that we live in at the moment it's just too easy to sit on your bum all day. So we just have to take action and get out there, and hopefully people will start realizing that. And I think there's a nice shift. Especially you probably see it more in London, and Bristol, where I am, is actually quite a nice hub for fitness. And you do see a lot more fitness events out there, a lot more inclusive kind of fitness and foodie events out there. And obviously, plant-based living and being active is becoming quite trendy, which can only be a good thing, I hope. So there is a bit of a shift in some cultures, but maybe there's just kind of two different extremes, I guess, which is something we need to kind of draw closer together.
Because for me, the plant-based revolution is more about getting people to have more vegetables, but I find because especially Bristol is quite a vegan hub as well, isn't it? Do you think I sometimes feel there's an issue, like a social divide, where people are saying I'm like a status thing, like I'm vegan, so I'm this, I'm passionate about the environment, animal welfare, fair enough, all those kind of things. But I think sometimes there's, especially with certain genres of diets, there's a bit of a social status or a clique kind of divide, and people rather than trying to encouraging everybody to be together. So
I definitely see that, and think it's almost like, I don't want to say a religion, but there is that cult kind of thing associated with veganism in some places, I think. And maybe that's more around sustainability and animal welfare. I think the people that maybe choose to be vegan for their own kind of health benefits or whatever they follow it for, that's not to do with that. Maybe that's kind of like a softer version of it. But I do see that there is a bit of a divide. But I think that plant-based eating is becoming a lot more wider understood and accepted, for both sustainability reasons and health benefits of just including more fruit and veg in your diet. I've been reading the Gut Health Diet book by Michael Mosley, and I don't believe in the word diet as such, but that basically 2/3 of the book is all basically the science about the gut microbiota and what foods we should be eating to help have a healthy gut. And there is no question that fiber, aka vegetables, are fantastic for your gut health, and your gut health is fantastic for immune health and brain function and everything like that. So that's why it's becoming more and more popular, I think, because people see the benefit of including more variety of vegetables and fruits, and grains, pulses, that sort of thing in their diet, and the fact that it might have a beneficial impact on the environment is a bonus, I guess.
And how do you work with your clients, or I know you've talked on the topics of going into schools and stuff, educating them, but what with Go Faster Food and yourself, what direction do you take in terms of encouraging kids, especially it's harder to get kids to eat more vegetables, but what direction do you take in terms of encouraging them to have more vegetables on their plate?
So we tend to talk about the eating a rainbow, and I think that's quite an easy way of getting kids into just eating variety. And generally, when I always say to the kids, that doesn't mean eating Skittles, because they say eat the rainbow on Skittles advert. But if you say, if you choose unprocessed foods and try and eat as much colour as you can from unprocessed foods, you're basically you will be eating more vegetables, because you can, I think, only get like purple, red, green. There's mostly the colours come from vegetables. Maybe a few lentils and things in there.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, your vegetables and your fruits are your fruit as well. Sorry, yeah. They're the colourful things. So that's quite an easy way of getting kids a bit more engaged in it. So if you say aim to have like 2 or 3 colours on your plate, automatically they'll be probably eating more fruit, vegetables, and different grains and things. Quite often you find people just have yellow plates, which is kind of just potatoes and your complex refined carbs, I guess. So definitely rainbow, and I do still use the 5 a day or 5+ a day, because I just think it's an easy way of people thinking about getting more fruit and veg on their plate. So for my clients, a lot of the time you're surprised at how little fruit and veg you can eat across the day. Sometimes they think that they do, and they might get a couple of things, but actually they're not really eating as much as they might think. So that's another reason why food diet is quite good, because you could just pick out little traits like that. I always promote thinking about fruit and vegetables almost above anything else. And for me, grains are really important, especially if I work with athletes who need to have kind of slightly more complex carbs on the plate. I think there's such a stigma around carbs, but actually when people say they want to cut carbs, a lot of the time it's just because they want to cut out white bread, white pasta, cereal. But actually, grains and starchy veg are so critical for good energy and for fiber, and all sorts of health benefits that come with it. So I think we need to kind of get away from demonizing carbohydrates and actually just start thinking about different types of carbohydrates and what carbs you want to include in your diet as well.
Yeah, it's just having an inclusive diet, isn't it, rather than saying one thing bad for you, really, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly.
And how do you work with the parents when you're doing that as well, or is it?
So when we do so we've got a program at the moment called Eat Like an Athlete, and we go into schools or sports clubs, and we basically use sport as a hook. So we'll talk about what their go faster is, so what exercise they like doing, and we'll kind of tackle nutrition linked to sport, as opposed to saying you're going to learn about health eating, because if you say you're going to learn about health eating, kids straight away go, oh god. So we go in and we talk to them about nutrition, and a lot of the time the parents are there, and we also make energy balls or smoothies, or show them kind of how much sugar they find in certain fizzy drinks. So the parents are all there for that sort of thing, and they quite often get involved in the little activities that we do as well, because I think that's so important to get the parents involved. There's only so much a 6-year-old or an 8-year-old can take in about nutrition, and at the end of the day, even if they really take everything on board and understand it and want to eat better, they might go home and their parent knows nothing about it and just feeds them whatever they can find. So so tackling the parents at certain ages is absolutely critical, for sure.
And it starts with the parents as well, and if you can if they can feed it to the kid. So that's really good. Last thing I wanted to touch on, I know I mentioned it before, we want to it's quite topical, so I wanted to bring it up, having a chat with you about sort of the normalization of obesity. With we're all trying to be more inclusive of every gender, sexual orientation, all those kind of things, which is great. Do you think there's an issue where obesity, plus size models, for example, not always a positive message for people, in terms of, because obviously they're going to be at an increased risk for heart disease, diabetes, because of their size. It's great that they are happy with their size, that's fantastic, but do you think there should be more awareness of the health implications of that?
Absolutely. So I actually did write a blog about this, I think either a few months ago or maybe late last year, because it was starting to actually really get to me. So as you say, I am all for people embracing their body shape, their natural body shape. Even myself, I sometimes used to get very conscious of the fact that I'm quite muscly, and I've always seen myself as slightly bigger than my friends because I've always been really sporty. I always longed for the twiggy legs or the twiggy arms. And so I completely am behind being confident in your own skin and embracing your natural curves, or your natural skinniness, whatever it may be. However, I really get my back up when I see people promoting dangerously high levels of body fat and body weight, because at the end of the day, I believe that if you love your body that much, you would treat it a lot better. So if you are 10 stone overweight and you're claiming that you love your body and you love your curves, whilst you may look at what's in the mirror, you are not treating your body very kindly, and it will not last very long. So I think that actually it's great to embrace any natural curves that you may have, but as long as you are being kind to your body and moving it and fueling it with good nutrition, then that is the key for me. I don't believe that you can be so in love with your body if you're not feeding it well and moving it. You're actually being quite cruel. So that's my view on it. And I do think that I think, as we said before, social media for young people these days, it can be a great thing and it can be a really dangerous thing. And having role models that are comfortable in their own skin and confident, whilst they may be slightly overweight, there's just a bit of a line that sometimes is crossed, I think. And I think parents need to understand that, you don't want your kids going either direction, I guess. And it's just kind of teaching them about how to look after themselves in the best way, and being happy with what they look like and how they feel, I guess.
Yeah, no, that's good. And what's your point on, I know we talked about social media a few times, so I wanted to just bring it up, but I know myself, I've kind of trying to distance myself from being on Instagram, Facebook, unless I'm using it for myself. I'm trying to exclude being concerned or worried about what everyone else is doing. So my thing is, like, I'm trying to spend less time on it and feel better for it. I switch my phone off at 9 o'clock. So it kind of, do you think there needs to be more push towards that as well, especially for young people, but also I think I don't know what's your feelings on how you handle social media pressures and stuff like that as well?
Yeah, so I'm similar to you. I kind of go through phases, I guess. But I actually went on holiday last year, and I went to Club Santa. It was either last year or the year before. I went to Club Santa, where for people like me and you, content, like pictures of food and sport, was just the perfect setting. And I banned myself from it for the whole week because I wanted to be there. I wanted to enjoy it with my eyes open, being with my friends and family. And it's, nowadays, it can really impact your relationships as well. By spending more time looking at your screen, you're not actually taking in the people around you and the experiences around you. So not only that, what you are looking at can also be harmful as well, in terms of, as you say, comparisons. It's easy for people to compare in terms of career, in terms of body shape, body size, how many likes other people are getting. It's so easy to do it. And I think you just need to take everything with a pinch of salt. I know people talk about it all the time, but at the end of the day, these pictures that people put up, the majority of them is them in a good light, in a good mood, doing something good. And I always occasionally try and post pictures of pizza or whatever, because people who know me know that I'm really balanced. But actually, generally, pictures of pizza don't look quite as nice as colourful, vibrant vegetables and salads and things. So I don't put them on my Instagram feed. But doesn't mean that I don't eat them. But people who come and visit my page will think, blimey, she has a good diet. And even one of my friends commented recently and said, sometimes I don't like looking at your stories because you're always active, you're always eating good food, and it makes me feel guilty. And I was like, it was a real shock to me, because I was like, that is not my intention. I'm there to try and give you like recipe ideas or workout ideas, and that is the last thing I want, is to make people feel guilty. So that was even coming from someone that has good intentions. The way other people view you is maybe different as how you think people will perceive you. So it's quite a scary place. So I think it's really important to limit your usage, and understand that there are times where you should just switch off and open your eyes and take everything in the world. Appreciate being in your world.
also, do you think there needs to be more honesty and transparency of
definitely,
just post stuff, as you're doing it, what you're doing,
definitely. That's why I actually do Instagram stories now, because I do post more pictures of like me having a few drinks, or me having like pizza, because it's more like my whole life, as opposed to my recipes and my fitness workouts and stuff. So I definitely think that Instagram stories are nice, because you get to actually have an insight into people's world, and people are starting to put pictures up of cellulite or them in a bad angle, and I think it is really important to do that. And my mum and husband said I tried to do one of me sitting down with rolls and things, and they were like, it just depends who's watching it, because some people might say, oh, you've got nothing, and then other people might think, oh, blimey, she's got a lot of rolls for someone who's into fitness and everything. So it's difficult to know what to post to kind of make others feel better, because you might end up insulting some people and you might end up inspiring others. So it's just it is hard, but I think we can only try, and I think people need to be a bit more real, definitely, on social media, just to make others feel a bit more normal, I guess.
No, that's very, very good point, Sophie. Last thing, I know we're sort of in a good chat, but one last thing I'd kind of like to ask most people: what would be, if I had to ask you one question, or if anyone listening to the podcast today could take one thing away from your story in terms of how you, so if they want to maybe adapt to more of a plant-based diet or a healthier diet. I know we discussed about the food diary and stuff, but what would be your one big tip that people could sort of take away from this chat to kind of apply in terms of getting themselves healthier? And
that is a very good question. I would always say enjoyment for me. So find some exercise that you enjoy, find a club that you enjoy, find a way of eating that you enjoy. Do things that you enjoy, because life's too short, but always, with the intention of it being healthy, of course. But I just think life's too short. We need to do things that we enjoy, but that give us benefit. And at the end of the day, if you're doing kind things to your body, like you're moving it more and you're feeding it well, you will feel amazing. And that is not a claim. It's just the truth. You will feel amazing. And the more and more you do it, the more habits you form, you will get so much more happiness and joy out of it. And I think others around you will feed off that as well. And bit by bit, we can hopefully, spread the message of being balanced and happy and healthy. And I don't know if that helps, but that's what I think.
No, it's good, because like you're the first person, rather than talking about nutrition and tips, you're right, because you are like me, you're only going to do swimming or triathlon because you enjoy it. You're not going to keep doing something you don't enjoy, are you? So you need to, that's the main thing, because that's the only way you're going to sustain it, isn't it? If you enjoy it. So
definitely.
Very good. Good. And if people wanted to get in touch with you, where would be the best place to get a hold of you? What kind of social media links, website, what would?
So I would say Instagram is the one that I'm most active on. So I'm Sophie-Jane Nutrition on Instagram, and I'm also on Facebook, Sophie-Jane personal trainer and nutritionist, and my website and stuff's on there. And then in terms of my work, so Go Faster Food is www.gofasterfood.com, and we're at Go Faster Food on social as well. So I'm quite an active person on Instagram, so I think that's probably the best place to find me.
Good. Well, we'll do. I'll post all those links in the show notes as well, so people can find them and then get in touch with you.
Sounds good.
If they want to. All right,
cool.
But I'll have a chat with you afterwards as well. But thank you very much for being on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Enjoyed having a chat with you. I hope
it was helpful.
It's been really good. It's a nice, nice perspective and not all science based, as we kind of talk about.
Yeah.
It's kind of real, and
Yeah.
I'm sure there's going to be a lot of some really good tips. I think the main one for me is the food diary stuff, which is a nice simple way of starting out rather than worrying about an app and just those color coding. I think it's
just
as simple as possible.
Exactly.
Really good for a lot of people actually. So
great.
Yeah.
That sounds good.
Good.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Let me just start. Hope you guys enjoyed the show again. Thank you very much for tuning in every week. And as I say always, if you do enjoy the show and you're happy to spend 2 minutes of your day just passing a little review over on iTunes, that'd be much appreciated.